I explained that there were really two messages. A public message, in 11 months something's going to happen, be ready. And a private message to the officials, it's going to be a slaughter of the Jews. The general public didn't know that. And that's why when the decree was published in Shushan, the capital, the text says that the city was confused. Both the Jews and the non-Jews were confused. What's going to happen in 11 months? We have to be told now without any information as to what the event is going to be. But Mordechai somehow knew. And he put on sackcloth and ashes and went wailing through the streets. And then the Jews, seeing what Mordechai did, followed suit. Esther hears about this, and now ensues the following interaction between Mordechai and Esther. The very bottom, 1255. Esther's maids and servants came and told her about it, and the queen was greatly distressed. She sent garments to clothe Mordechai, that he might take off his sackcloth, but he would not accept it. Now, why is that? I mean, are the photographers from Vogue coming to take pictures, and put them up in the fashion magazines? Why is she sending him clothes to take off his sackcloth? The answer is, as we will see shortly, and we actually saw previously as well, you can't walk through the gate to the king's palace in sackcloth. You can't do that. She wants to know what's happening, so she wants to hear from Mordechai. Here's a change of clothes. Change of clothes, come in and tell me. And he refuses to take them. Okay, I've told you the paragraph breaks in English don't reflect the Hebrew. Verse 5, Esther summoned Hasach, one of the king's servants, whom he had appointed to attend her, and ordered him to go to Mordechai to learn what this was about and why. Perhaps if we have time today, I'll come back to that phraseology. So Hasach went out to Mordechai, to the city square, which was in front of the king's gate. You could come up to the entrance of the king's gate, but you couldn't go into the king's gate with sackcloth. And Mordechai told him of all that had happened to him, and all about the sum of money that Haman had promised to pay the royal treasuries for the annihilation of the Jews, even though the king didn't take it, but as we explained, because he was concerned that people should see him as independent. But if Haman offered a bribe to do what the king is willing to do, and he didn't take it, don't think that we can get out of this by bribing somebody, because it's not going to work. He also gave him a copy of the decree, which was distributed in Shushan for their destruction, so that he might show it to Esther and inform her. Now, the English here says bidding her. Bid is a word that you've never used in this context. It's like Old English. Maybe if you're from London, you have some idea what it means. But the Hebrew is commanding. Showing her the decree and commanding her to go to the king, appeal to him, plead with him for her people. Hasach came and told Esther what Mordechai had said. Esther told Hasach to return to Mordechai with this message. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces are well aware that if anyone, man or woman, approaches the king in the inner courtyard, which is where he happens to be now and has been for some time, without being summoned, there is but one law for him that he put to death. Entering and even appealing for an audience with the king, the law is you die. There's a place where he should not be disturbed by anyone or anyone for any reason, except for the person to whom the king shall extend the gold scepter so that he may live. Now, the king may decide to let the person live, but the general rule is the person has to die. I have not been summoned to the king for the past 30 days. Okay. So what? Well, this is now the 13th of Nisan, and the decree is signed for the 13th of Adar. That's 11 months hence. That's a long time. We have time to think of strategies. Time, in particular, if you want me to go and make an appeal, and I go against the law, and I need his special favor just not to be killed, am I in a good position to negotiate for another special favor? Wouldn't it be better to wait for a time when he calls me and he wants to see me, and then when I come, I can ask him for the favor. Wouldn't I be in a better bargaining position?
So when she says he hasn't been there in 30 days, it's almost like a good thing because it's more likely that he'll call on her soon.
It could be. That could be also. I think that you don't know because you don't know what he's negotiating there. Maybe he's facing a possible war. It's hard to tell. But for sure, she says, he's and I suppose in their interactions between Achashverosh and Esther, 30 days was a long time. He was absolutely, fascinated by her and charmed by her. So this is the message that she sends back to Mordechai. They related Esther's words to Mordechai. Then Mordechai said to reply to Esther, do not imagine that you'll be able to escape in the king's palace any more than the rest of the Jews. After up until now, nobody knows she's Jewish. Nobody knows her origin. Don't think you're going to escape. If you persist in keeping silent at a time like this, relief and deliverance will come to the Jews from other place. The Jews aren't going to be destroyed. We'll have to ask how he knew that. I'll explain that to you in a little while. While you and your father's house will perish. Very, very strong, I would say almost bitter response on Mordechai's part to her explanation of why she's hesitant. And who knows whether it was just for such a time as this that you would change the royal position. That's why you became queen, to be able to have this opportunity to plead on behalf of the Jewish people. Now, if you read the story as I just presented it, it's very hard to understand why Mordechai comes back at her in such a bitter fashion. You're going to be destroyed, you and your house, if you don't do what I say. I didn't see the commentaries. Of course, there are hundreds of commentaries, and I didn't see them all, obviously. But I didn't see a commentary that raises this question. But I think the answer, if you put together the scenarios I've described in the last 10 minutes, you can see the answer right on the surface. Let's try it again. He's wailing through the streets. She hears about that. She wants to know what's going on. She sends him a change of clothing, because he can't come in to talk to her in sackcloth. And what does he say? I can't do that. I can't do that. Why not? This message that he just gave now couldn't take more than 3 minutes to say. He couldn't change his clothes to come in to tell her. He's sending her a signal. It's now or never. There's no time to waste. Can't be done next month. The circumstances are such that either we make the move now or it's over. And she's saying, well, have him call him 30 days, And he's in his inner sanctum, and who knows if there's good bargaining position. She missed the signal. She missed the signal. Why did she miss the signal? Says Mordechai, because you're a little out of touch. You're a little out of touch. He has no realistic thought. Maybe she thinks all the Jews will be killed, will be destroyed, and she'll be saved because no one knows she's Jewish, and she's okay, so she doesn't care. That's not a havamina, as we say in Gemara Lashon. That's not something which could be taken seriously at all. But he's magnifying it, and the prophets do this often. He's magnifying the failure to make it very glaring. I sent you a signal and you missed the signal. It has to be done now. Let me finish the story. I want to get the balance into it. That's the first half of the story. Okay. 15. That Esther said to reply to Mordechai, go, assemble all the Jews to be found in Shushan, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I, with my mates, will fast also. Then I will go into the king, though it is unlawful, and if I perish, I perish. Okay? A 3-day, complete, 72-hour fast. She's willing to do it with this protocol. And then the last verse, 17, your English translator translates Mordechai then left, but the Hebrew says Vayavor Mordechai. He crossed over. Why would the text use the word cross over to indicate that he left? Why not just Vayetze or Vayelech? One of the commentators says that the palace had a moat around it, and he crossed over the moat to get back into the city. Okay, that could be. I would like an explanation of why the text had to tell me that. Like, why would I care whether there was a moat or not? But the Medrash says something else. The Medrash says that when she sent him the message to fast for 3 days and 3 nights, Mordechai sent back, there's another interchange here which isn't recorded in the text, sent back a message to her. What day is this taking place on? The 13th of Nisan. You want a 3-day fast. That's 14, 15, and 16th of Nisan. 15th of Nisan is the first day of Pesach. You want an absolute fast? That means no one's going to eat matzah on the 15th of Nisan, at least not in Shushan. No one's going to eat matzah. Is that a way to gain God's favor by violating one of his commandments? This isn't a reasonable protocol for what we're trying to accomplish. To do it in such a way is to violate one of God's commandments. And she sends back to him, this is my words now, but this is how I understand the Midrash. She says back to him, Mordechai, you missed your own signal. The signal you sent me was, it's now or never. This is life and death. And if it's life and death, the words of the Midrash are, if Haman's plan is successful, who will eat matzah next year? There won't be any Jews to eat matzah next year. So this is a case where you have a strategy to save yourself from absolute oblivion that takes precedence over a commandment like eating matzah. What we call pikuach nefesh. And Mordechai accepted from her, and the Vayavor, says the Midrash, is he crossed over his own judgment. And the verse ends, and did exactly as Esther commanded him. Now look at the symmetry here. She missed the signal, and he had to point it out to her in very stringent terms, and she accepted it. Then she says to make a fast, and he's reluctant, and she says, you missed your own signal. And he accepts it from her, and she commands him. Kasher tzivsa of Esther. She commands, so each one can command the other, each one can make up for the deficiencies of the other, each one is listening to the other. And that's how this turns around. I think this is a paradigm example of how, in Torah sources, husband and wives interact with each other when they're interacting well. There are sometimes where they interact not so well, either tremendously evil or sometimes just failures. But here's an example of how it works in terms of cooperation. Are we together? Now, one thing that Mordechai said was the Jews will be saved from another agency. Go back to 1255, at the beginning of chapter 4. We read this last time, but now it becomes relevant. Mordechai learned of all that had been done. Mordechai tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes. He went out to the midst of the city and cried loudly and bitterly. Came to the front of the king's gate. Was forbidden to go to enter the king's gate, clothed with sackcloth. In every province, wherever the king's command and his decree extended, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing, most of them lying in sackcloth and ashes. The reaction of the Jewish people was instantaneous and immediate and unanimous. They all understood that this was life or death. They all understood it was going to depend upon whether God has mercy on them or not. They all undertook the most stringent ways of trying to reform themselves and appeal to Hakadosh Baruch Hu. And Mordechai saw that. He saw that in Shushan. We'll talk about this before Purim. This is the third of a 3-part series in the events, and this is a tikkun for failures before. But I haven't spoken about that yet. So he saw that the Jewish people got the message. He saw that they're responding the appropriate way, but something has to be done. Someone has to approach the king. Someone has to work out a strategy to be able to get the wheels in motion. So he says to her, you became queen, and you became queen in a matter which, in probabilistic terms, is less than zero. We now see that those events, which from our point of view were unthinkable, may have put you in the position to be able to turn the wheels here. And I think that's the case, and I think because you have this access, you have to use it, and that's why you have to do it. Now, I've taught this many, many times, but we had a woman who was a spy, so she got married 2 weeks ago, and her husband, her new husband, pointed out to me something which I didn't have noticed before. If you back 1256 at the end of chapter 4, what does she say? She says, verse 16, go assemble all the Jews found in Shushan and fast for me. Do not eat and drink for 3 days, night or day. Isn't that a little redundant? Doesn't fast mean do not eat and drink? She could have said fast for me for 3 days, day and night, or do not eat or drink day or night, without saying both. And one of the commentaries, B'nai Yissaschar, says she was specifically saying here, including matzah. Don't eat anything. Not even something which is a commandment to eat. Don't eat it. It has to be an absolute fast. Okay? Yeah, so then I answered that question. Fine. Yes?
Two questions. One, what gives her the authority to tell the Jewish people that? And my second question is, regarding her saying she hasn't seen the king in 30 days, how is that possible? I know you said he has a massive harem, but like, it's the queen. How could he not see her for 30 days?
So, by the way, the words here is that he didn't summon her. He didn't call for her. Now, how is it possible? Well, he's in this place where no one is allowed to disturb him for any purpose. So he wants isolation. For whatever reason it is, he wants isolation. Maybe he's negotiating something with secret messengers, some foreign power, or whatever it is. But she's saying that he hasn't been interested in my presence for 30 days. I assume he wasn't interested in anybody else's presence for 30 days, except the ones who are engaged in this particular problem that he's facing. And she says, you know, he hasn't shown a desire that I should make an appearance. If I walk in against the natural law, and we've spoken about him also, he wants everything to be done according to the rules, because he wants to stress his legitimacy, because he doesn't come from the royal family, because he's an outsider. So if there's a rule that everyone who comes should be killed, he's going to have a very strong temptation to follow it. The question is whether her psychological hold of him will be strong enough, or whether divine providence better will engineer that she should be saved, but certainly no guarantee of it.
Why did she have to send the minister to go to Mordechai? She could just go herself. If Mordechai couldn't come in.
The relationship between the two of them was not public. And he is the leader of the Jews. So if she's going to go out and confer with the leader of the Jews, that's going to raise eyebrows. Remember, the king tried to find out who she is. After she's chosen as queen, it says he gave tax relief to all the provinces, and he gave presents to all the provinces. And then it says when the women were gathered a second time in the capital, what's that? Why would they gather the second time? He's already got a queen. And the commentators say he was trying to frighten her. He's asking her, who are you? And she doesn't say. And so she said, well, this is a symptom of, I'm getting another one. I'll get rid of you. She doesn't say. So this is, is what Mordechai commanded her to do.
But if Papa was one of the king's ministers, does he then learn that there's a connection between the two of them?
I don't know. I don't know how many times she has to confer with people or send messages to people and so forth and so on. I don't know.
It seemed like he was the back and forth, so...
Yeah, but he was, she's been there for years already, and she has had probably, things to do. He's her most trusted servant. Okay, so now, let me read the next paragraph, and then I'll explain to you there's a crucial ambiguity here, and there's two different opinions in the commentators. Came to pass on the third day. Esther donned royalty, that's she put on her royal clothes, and stood in the inner court of the king's palace, facing the king's house, while the king was sitting on his throne, in the throne room, facing the chamber's entrance. So you have a small chamber. There's actually a picture of this in the Persian history of how the king sat, and it's a small room, and he's sitting on his throne, facing the entrance, and he has a giant staff of gold in his hand. Just exactly what's described here. You can see it. When the king noticed Queen Esther standing in the court, she won his favor. The king extended to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. Esther approached and touched the top of the scepter. There's gigantic symbolism here, which I'll tell you either tomorrow maybe. The king said to her, What is it for you, Queen Esther? And what is your petition? Even if it be half the kingdom, it shall be granted you. I'll explain this also in detail in a little while. Esther said, if it please the king, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet I have prepared for him. Banquet? The word in Hebrew is mishta. Mishta means drinking party. Banquet in English is delightfully ambiguous. What's the main course? Goose? No, it's a drinking party. Yeah, you can have some pretzels in between the drinks, but it's really a drinking party. Mishta. King commanded, tell Haman to hurry, fulfill Esther's wish. King and Haman came to the banquet that Esther prepared. Okay, he knows that she's not inviting him, especially from the inner chamber, just to have a nice meal. He knows that. The king said to Esther during the wine feast. Wine feast is a better translation. What is your request? It shall be granted you. What is your petition? Even behalf of the kingdom, it shall be fulfilled. I know you want something. I know you want something that's absolutely crucial to you. What is it? So Esther answered and said, may my request of my petition, if I have won the king's favor, and if it pleases the king to grant my request to perform my petition, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them tomorrow. And tomorrow I will do the king's bidding. 24 hours. I'm not telling you today what I want, I'll tell you tomorrow. And tomorrow I will do the king's bidding. I will do what he has commanded me to do. What's that? There must be some outstanding issue between them, and it's been a point of tension between them, and she's been putting him off, and finally she says, tomorrow I'm going to do what you wanted me to do. The one thing he's wanted her to do is identify who she is. Right? Tomorrow, when she goes in, that's when she says, I'm a Jew, and he's Haman, he wants to kill us, and so forth and so on, and makes a petition. Okay? That's the scenario. Now, I have one little tiny question here. We started with the words, it came to pass on the third day. Third day of what? Which third day? She said to Mordecai, everyone should fast for me 3 days and 3 nights, and I will go into the king. When did she mean she was going to go into the king? If you naturally think, they're going to fast for 3 days and 3 nights, on the third day, at the height of the fast, she'll go into the king, then we have to face the fact that she has a 2-day plan in mind. So if the first time she goes in is the third day, it sounds a little bit like that because she says he'll accept me or won't accept me, he'll give me the golden scepter or won't, then it means that the day in which she goes in and tells him that she's Jewish and tries to betray the Jewish people is the 4th day after the fast is finished, and they're eating pizza and lasagna, and they're all having beer, and it's Pesach, okay. they're having steak and whatever it is. It's all over. Why would she do that? Why would she do that? So some commentators say, no. The first day she went in was the 3rd day from when she was talking, not the 3rd day of the fast. So you got the day in which she's talking, day 1 of the fast, day 2 of the fast. The first time she goes in is day 2 of the fast. And then on the next day, that's day 3 of the fast, at the height of the fast. And at the height of the fast, she will then make her appeal. That would mean that at the very height of the fast, that's the moment at which either it works or it doesn't work. She'll make the appeal, and either he'll accept it or he won't accept it. That makes much more sense. And it is possible to interpret the text that way. One second. The question is, why would anybody interpret it the other way? And the commentators are split. Why would anybody interpret it that she's going to go in the first time on the 3rd day of the fast, and then make a deal that there should be another drinking party the day after the fast, and the day after the fast she's going to present her petition to save the Jewish people? Why would she organize it that way? The answer, a way to explain it is this. Gold, in our tradition, is a symbol of strict judgment, strict justice. Silver is a symbol of loving kindness, and gold is strict judgment. And here's the king, who's the judge, and he's sitting on the throne, and he's sitting on the most august throne room in the whole of the Persian Empire. You see the attribute of strict justice in bold, right in front of you. All the trappings are there. She walks in, justice, the law say, death on the spot. When he hands her the gold scepter, she touches the scepter, the symbol of strict judgment, strict justice. She touches the scepter and she lives, it's all over. Everything else is aftermath. Because the attribute of justice has agreed to let her live. All the rest is just aftermath. This is the crucial moment, and that's why she planned it to be on the third day of the fast, that she go in the first time. If once she's accepted, it's all the rest is just, appendices. That's what. If you say that that's the chronology, that's a way to explain it. Yes.
Sorry, I'm not sure I entirely understood. There's a lot of stuff right there. You're saying because the scepter's gold, it represents judgment. But first of all, according to who? And you're saying that because it's not like walking into the temple, like you'll be over, God's light will kill you. Like I'm a little bit confused on the logistics of this.
Okay, let me put in another piece of information here. Maybe this will help. I'm trying to see where you're coming from. The tradition tells us that the king is referred to by two different phrases throughout the book, many times each one. Sometimes he's called King Ahasuerus, and sometimes he's just called the king. And since there's only one king in the story, so you know who it's speaking about. But our tradition tells us that when it just says the king, it's referring to both Ahasuerus and the Creator. King with a little k, and king with a big K. So when you have the king, and the king is sitting on the throne, and the king has the gold scepter in his hand, and the law is that anyone will die if he approaches the king, she knows that there's a double scenario going on here. She's coming to approach the flesh and blood Ahasuerus, and she's also appearing before the God who is behind Haman's decree to annihilate the Jewish people. That isn't an accident from our point of view. It's all divine providence. That means there's a decree in heaven that's in the works in terms of tremendous loss for the Jewish people. So she's operating on two levels at the same time. Her words have to be understood that way as well. We'll go back to that and take a look at her words. Everything is operating on a double level. So since the earthly setup is consistently populated by symbols of strict justice, sitting on the throne, and he is a king. He's not an advisor. He's not a psychiatrist. He's the king, and he's holding a golden scepter. So she knows that this is an expression of divine judgment as well, and that's why she knows that if he accepts her, it means that Kadosh Baruch Hu is managing the situation in such a way that he wants them to be saved, and that's why she wants this to be on the third day of the fast, not the second banquet in which she carries things out. Okay? Yeah.
There's nothing I thought of it because it's Pesach. Does that mean that the banquet, when they actually have it, he's going to reveal who she is because there's going to be matzah at the banquet?
No. First of all, either way, it's not going to be on the 15th. It's going to be on the daytime. Matzah has to be eaten at night.
All matzah?
The matzah that you have a biblical commandment, one of the 613 commandments, is one time only, and it's the night of the 15th of Nisan. And these are daytime feasts, so it's not going to help for that. But she's not going to bring matzah into the king. Absolutely not. And by the way, it's not obvious at all that she's going to eat at all. She's, it's very interesting. Some of you know when Yisro, Moshe's father-in-law, came to visit them in the desert, and Moshe went out to meet him and prostrated himself in front of him as a matter of honor, and they came back and it was a big feast. And it doesn't say that Moshe was eating at the feast because he was serving. He was serving. Like Abraham also doesn't say that he ate when he served the three travelers. It doesn't say he ate. Here, she's making a feast for the king. And having learned the history of Vashti, she knows very well what that means. That the queen, with a capital Q, is the king's servant. Don't get any wrong ideas. You're my servant, just like everybody else is my servant. Don't question my authority. Don't question my judgment. Don't question my power. No, just make sure you know your place. And she knows her place. She knows how to play her place. Now, Let's go back to verse 3 on page 1256, bottom of the page. King said to her, what is it for you? What is it, and what is your petition? Now there are two words that repeat over and over again. One is she'elah and the other is bakasha. In literal Hebrew, she'elah is a question, or sometimes she'elah means to borrow something, and a bakasha means a supplication, a petition and a supplication. It's much more serious than a she'elah. And the king repeats over and over what both of them. Here he says ma'loch, and afterwards he says ma she'elah seich. What is your request, and what is your petition? And the difference is that in the second one, each time he says up to half of the kingdom. For the first one he doesn't say that, and for the second one he says that over and over again. What is up to half of the kingdom? She wants him to give. She wants him to give her half the kingdom. It's not practical. She's not going to rule half the kingdom. She can't even rule the dining room. It all belongs to him. What he means is this: up to half means up to and not including. It means the majority is still left behind. And the bakasha, the petition here, is something which might disturb the social, political, economic order. Don't destabilize the kingdom. For yourself, you want a palace in Odessa, you want a month on the Nile, whatever you want. Personally, no limits. Personally, no limits. But if your request has any social or political overtones, don't destabilize. Which is, again, Achashverosh, the one who's worried about stability, worried about his reputation, and so on, and he's telling her, I'm drawing a line. Don't destabilize. Now, of course, in her mind, she has both. She's asking that she not be killed, according to this decree, and also is asking that this whole nation against whom the decree has been signed, and which would have international repercussions throughout a kingdom of 127 provinces. She knows that that's also part of it. So she's got to work it out in such a way that she meets the conditions that he is setting. And when she finally does set the petition before him, she copies his words. You want to know what my she'elah is, what my bakasha is, my request, my petition? Here it is. So she's taking him very seriously. Here he's using, I would say, diplomatic phraseology to communicate a limitation on what he's prepared to give her. And of course, if it pleases the king, we saw that her place there is only because she pleases the king. Otherwise, she's nothing. That was the way the selection was made. A beautiful girl who pleases the king. And the other question that we'll have to face is, why is she inviting Haman? What's the idea of inviting Haman to this one and to the next one? We'll see that's part of her strategy. It's part of her plan. I guess. And then for her to say, tomorrow I will do the king's bidding, you see, he knows that she needs something drastic. She's offering him something which he wants. He's been trying to get, he even tried to manipulate her into revealing it. And he's smart enough to figure out, if she's now going to do what she hasn't done for years, the thing that she needs must be very, very significant. It must be very, very important to her. Because she obviously has a principle of not revealing who she is, and she's kept it for years, and now she's going to break that principle. So also she's planting in his mind the idea that this is something which is overwhelmingly important. Okay? I'm sorry I was late. Could not have anticipated, the disturbances on the